over on this computer, share my screen. It's a process every single time.
Yes.
Cool. So today we are going to be making avatars. So there were some, I think, navigation mockups that's being worked on and designs that are being shared where there is like a little avatar that appears at the very bottom or perhaps at the very top. But in general, avatars are like a common enough thing where it should be part of the component library. So I'm going to try to share my iPad real fast because that's how I design and think. Because I draw. Let's see. Okay, 1919. Okay, there we go. Great, cool. Can you see my iPad?
Yep.
Great. Let's go away. Okay. So the interesting thing about avatars is, well, they can render in several different ways. You know, you have your circle, maybe a square, or maybe sort of like a rounded square. Maybe. So it can render in one of three ways. As part of this component library / little design system, we had to determine which one of these guys we want to support in terms of default rendering. So based on what I've seen in other component libraries and just design in general, I feel like the square avatar is not really being used. Circle is probably most common. Secondary would be rounded square. So we'll support these two roundings. The other interesting thing about avatars is that they offer them in a variety of different sizes, right? So you can have like a big one, a medium-sized one, a small one, and this one ranges like maybe this is like a 48 by 48. This was maybe a 24 by 24. This may be like a 16 by 16, something like that. So that means that this avatar also needs to support a range of sizes. So we have those. And the other interesting thing about avatars is you may notice that sometimes, there's a picture, there is a placeholder, there's an actual picture, and depending on what you need to render, maybe there is initials. Because we've seen this in like Google and whatever, right? So it's like if you prefer to have a placeholder image like a gravatar kind of thing, we need to support that. If you give it an image, then we can render the image. Or if you prefer to render initials, then you supply us with a name, and then we'll intelligently get the first and last letter of the initials, and then we'll make that into the avatar. Alternatively, if there's only like one name, like a handle or a first name or something like that, it needs to consider that, where it renders just N. And the other thing is sometimes avatars, they are not used in isolation, they are used in groups. So that means that maybe we need to create another component that does something like this, where avatars can stack. We get multiple avatars.
Right.
So that's also one consideration. And the last thing, I keep saying there's like one more thing, because there's always one more thing. Right now, avatars have become very, very synonymous with like statuses, right? So what I mean by that is like, please give me a green. Depending on the UI, maybe you want an avatar and then you have like new notification or you're online, you're offline or something. So it needs to support status, maybe. So I think these are roughly the use cases that we have, but already you can see like something that's basically a circle that renders an image needs to be able to handle all these different cases, right? And ideally, the component library should give you a single thing, this being the avatar component, that can do all of these things for you. Otherwise, if you're going to use this component to build your custom blocks or custom UIs, if this component library doesn't do that for you, that means you, the implementer, you have to do all this, and that feels bad.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. And if I were to dive in a little bit, I'm just going to shrink that a little bit. So in terms of subcomponents, we've identified one, that being this guy, right? Whoops, maybe you can't see. There we go. So we've identified one of them. This one's like a status dot, maybe. Just call it whatever, status dot. Naming is hard. Another one, I'm going to use a different color. So that's a status dot. This one's another one. This is like maybe an avatar group, a group. This could be one, something like initials. And avatars, you know, when they render pictures, they render images. So we need, this may seem unnecessary, but I'll get into why it's preferable to have like an actual image component, because it does some intelligent things underneath the hood beyond just the HTML image. For example, an image component, we can leverage CSS object fit. Object fit is awesome, right? Like you don't get this from the default image, but object fit, you can, you know, scale it or do whatever, and it fits things really nicely. The other really cool thing, if we do go in the route of, oh, let's add an image component, is, if you can imagine, just going to hide these things. If we have an intelligent, if we have an intelligent like custom image component, another very common thing that you would do with images is aspect ratios, right? Like a 16:9 or 1:1, like a what do you call it, a Instagram square or something like that. So being able to say, oh, here's our image, here's our SRC. I'm gonna hang on. There we go. Here's our SRC, but then also we want to use this aspect ratio of like 16:9, and then it'll intelligently scale it to 16:9 based on the width or whatever it is. So all these are like really, really nice, but also kind of common thing that you would, as a designer or developer, add into your image, right? And again, if we don't add this to the image component, then the implementer have to do it on their own, and that's bad. We want to make this as out of the box easy as possible. So from a simple avatar, we've determined that we need, you know, an avatar, we need an image, maybe initials, an avatar group, maybe a status dot. With me so far?
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Alrighty, let's close my iPad. How do I?
So, like, if you were going to take this and add some words to it that maybe other like developers would react to, they would want to hear that we're building a component that's extensible.
Yeah, absolutely. Right?
Yeah. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to give them the options that they can, you know, hook into to be able to output what they need.
Yeah. So we're building essentially, we're trying to understand all those different use cases, and we're creating smart defaults in a way, right? So instead of having arbitrary rounded corners of any pixel value, it would be circle or rounded, something like that for the thing. So it's for convenience. But the interesting thing is also, and this depends on the kind of system you want to build, is like, do you want to enable them to also be able to add arbitrary sizes if they want to, right? So in this case of Atlassian's design system, they give you 6 sizes that you can choose from. So for the thing we're building, we can offer like 6 sizes, but if you choose to give it a size of 131 pixels for reasons, we should allow that. So that's a decision that we have to we can make. And so far, that's kind of how I've been approaching this whole thing, where all these components, they have smart defaults, but if you choose to give it arbitrary values, then you can. So, alrighty. Can you see my storybook? This is my local storybook I have fired up.
Yep.
So I don't know if you saw this blog post I wrote. If not, it's fine. So there's a brand new documentation site that I worked on over the weekend that's been incredibly fun. .com. It's a .com. I bought a .com just for this. So there aren't too many docs yet, but for the ones that are available, it's kind of cool. You have a live code editor with the live preview that you can see. But for the purposes of this coding session, the thing I want to introduce, the feature I want to introduce, is this inspector. So what inspector does is, once you turn it on, it'll actually highlight and show you I don't know if you can see on my screen, the G2 components that are rendered on screen. So in this case, we have a view, we have a text, and this for learning is great if you're browsing the docs to kind of see how things are kind of built. But for me, as for developing, you can imagine is very, very helpful because I can see where certain sizes are as I go through my process. Yeah, so it's a convenient little dev tool. And lastly, I've added this globally to the site as well, so you can see how the entire site is actually constructed with G2. Anyway, fun fact. Let's start coding. So we have in our directory, components directory, a list of all the available components so far within the component library. So in order for us to create a brand new component, I've actually created some handy scripts within this project. So if we go to remake, I'm going to create a brand new component called avatar. It'll generate all the files for us, which is great because I don't have to do that. What else do we need? We need an image. Cool. Let's work on let's work on avatar first. Avatar stories here. So now we have an avatar. Great. Right now it does not do anything. Oh, I had to fire up my local storybook. npm start, or sorry, yarn start. So while that's going up, the kind of experience I want to build for this is I want to make this whole thing as easy as possible to do stuff. That includes people working directly in the project. So I built convenience things like scaffolding, like you saw the code generator for this particular component.
Right.
But then also for folks who may, let's say hypothetically later on, this becomes like something that people will use. Also want to make sure I craft the experience so that docs are easy to navigate, to understand, to learn from, and to reference. So something like this, where we have flex and then it mentions some other components. So if you click on that, you actually see a description of that and also a code snippet, which is easy to copy and paste.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so that's nice. Right.
That
so
is
right now,
immensely. Yep. That's a really, really valuable tool that you're building here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's basically me working with these kinds of systems and stuff before, but then also just curiously poking at how other companies and how other projects do things, like your Shopify Polaris, an Atlassian Atlas Kit, and so on, and kind of taking the best of everything, right? Like, oh, I like how these docs do this. I like how that docs do that, and then I just take the best parts and just make something pleasant for us. Cool. So right now we have avatar to start. Right now it doesn't do anything because it's just hello. So you should see the word hello. Great. And because I built an inspector, I've added this to the configure area. So we can actually turn that on and we can have inspector out of the box, which is great. So right now I just see that there is whoops, let's turn it on. So we just see that there's something there. Cool. We need to create a bunch of sizes. So now we get to, this gets to the part where I start like designing the thing. Before in the past, I would design this kind of stuff inside of like a Sketch or a Figma and then translate it into code. But over time, I just found that for me personally to be kind of unnecessary, especially after I've gone through the iPad drawing of these are all the things we want to build, and I kind of get an idea of what I want. Then I just kind of design in the browser. It's just easier for me. So let me just design this avatar completely inside of here in this story. So we have a function of avatar. It returns for now a div that says hello. So now we just see hello. Okay, great. I'm gonna import a view from . Okay, view. So the thing about this, the very important thing about this component library is that we don't render arbitrary HTML like div and UI and li and so on. We always use a view. And the reason for that is Vue has a lot of built-in things inside of it that does some really nice things for us. So a view is a thing that understands things like dark mode and like high contrast and all that stuff is built into Vue. You get that for free. The other thing is that it does some normalization for us. So things like box sizing border box or margin 0 to nullify all margins and default font sizes and default font families. The interesting but very important detail about this is typically these styles, I don't know if you can see, these styles exist as some sort of like reset, like a CSS reset that's going to be applied to a site, a theme, or whatever the case may be. The danger, though, of having like a component library that's supposed to be brought in to any project, any site, is that we cannot rely on resets because they may or may not be there. Therefore, like these values,
Right.
box sizing border box, for example, is very important. Like it needs to be built into every single one of these out of the box, and they cannot bleed out. Because we can't just arbitrarily inject box sizing border box into a project that we import this in. It could break everything. And this comes from experience because at the previous company I worked at, they did not have this as a global. So when I built the initial version of the CSS framework, that broke everything. So that was a very, very valuable learning lesson there. So now we have a view, and then what kind of properties do we want to give it? So we can give it a let's say a size. So const, just write some styles, some inline styles for now. Width is size and height is size. And then we have a background of red. So just so that we can see something. Style, okay. Now we should see a red square. Unfortunately, it's not a square. Why are you not a square? Oh, right. Because by default, this is a, no, wait. Oh, never mind. So underneath the hood, the component library is trying to save me from things. So if you put arbitrary text inside of a view, it'll wrap it with another component called text. Text, similar to view, is a very low-level component that does some nice things for text content, which typically you would put inside of a span or a P or something like that. But then there's a lot of cool things you can do with text. So an example is that you cannot get out of the box is truncation, right? So you can truncate text by saying, oh, let me render some text, let me truncate it for you, and you can truncate it. But you can also truncate it in different ways. So you can truncate in the middle, for example, which requires JavaScript math to figure out numbers and something that you don't need to worry about. All you got to say is truncate this text, truncate it in the middle, and limit the amount of text to like 40. And you can adjust that number to whatever it is you want, like 10. Anywho, there's my little thing into text and why that was rendering weird. Okay, so now we have a red square. And in terms of me using this thing, so I can do something like, oh, hang on, yeah, size 32. But before I do that, I'm going to render a bunch of these guys just so I can see. So let's say we have a size of 48, we have size 32, and then we have a 16. Okay, so now we see we have a bunch of different sizes. For just to visually be able to kind of see them, I'm going to use another component from the library called hstack. Hstack is a layout component designed to stack things or align things horizontally. So now that we can see that we have, it's aligned this for us. I'm going to make it align to the left-hand side because by default, it'll try to spread them. Great, so now we have one of these. But the other thing is, in addition to numbers, I want it to understand some base values like large or small or medium or something like that. So I'm going to create a little map, large, and maybe the large size is 48. Maybe the medium size is, I'm making up things now, 32 seem kind of big. Sure.
Oh,
I don't know. Sure.
16? The answer is 16.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. 16. Yay. Maybe this one needs to be. Okay. We'll have an X large. X large will be the 48. Cool. So now we have some sizes. So what we can do is I'm just going to write a little function that's like get size, and then it takes an incoming size. So we can check. So if it's a const, I'm just going to call this something. Typically, I'm very bad at naming things at the very beginning. I go back and clean things in the end. Supported size is that. If return supported size, otherwise size. Okay, so I'm just change this to a different name, size prop. So if my const size is get size, cool. So now, whoops, there we go. So now instead of passing in these, we can say large, medium, or arbitrary 13 if we wanted to, and that should work.
Okay.
Nice. Cool. So now we have sizes, and it also wants to create the rounding, right? Whether it's a circle or a square-ish rounded rectangle thing. Now I'm going to cheat by checking out what they named something. What do they call this? Appearance. I don't know if that's the name I want to use. Appearance? What do you think? What should these be called?
It's not appearance. It's almost like a render, but that might be used.
Variant? Style?
Yeah.
Variant? All right,
yeah.
cool. So it's just called border radiuses. If we have a circle, it's like, you know, the arbitrary super giant something. And was it, I guess I'll call this a square. I'll have that. Similar to size, we can do this. Get border radius. Border radius. Supported. I'm just going to rename this real fast. Supported. Okay. Border radius. Border radii. Sure. That's a word, right? It is today. Okay. Const of border radius is get border radius for variant, and the default variant is circle. Let's try that. Hopefully that works. Cool. So now we have circles. Let me just do this variant as a square. Great. You see this?
Oh, yeah. That's great.
Yeah. So now we have, hang on. Let me do a cool thing that we can do with storybook examples. Well, that's not right. Okay, there we go. Let's just render a bunch of them automatically without me having to write stuff. So let me just loop through all the sizes. So what we can do is const sizes equals object keys sizes. So right now I'm just getting all the sizes. No, keys? Yeah, I'm just getting all the sizes in an array. So I'm going to loop through the array. Map size is avatar. We need a key size equals size. Boop, boop, boop. Of course, it's going to yell at me. Why? Why is it mad? Sizes was used before it was defined. What? Oh, der. Avatars. I can't do that. Yeah. Well then. Well, hang on.
That's yeah. They're ordered differently.
Yeah, I have my auto sorting thing on. I gotta turn that off. How do I do that? How do I do this? ESLint disable something. Hang on. ESLint disable. So I have ESLint turned on that will automatically sort things within an object for us, which is handy 98% of the time. It is not handy this time. There we go. So now we have an array of various avatars, and we can do the same thing here. Let's have 2 stacks where we have the same thing, but we have the variant is a square. So that's going to complain because we can't have that. I'm going to wrap this in a V stack. The V stack is a vertical stack. So we have horizontal stack and vertical stack. You will see it should look like that. Great. So we have 2 horizontally stacking things that render a bunch of these guys, so we can see. So what's really interesting here, I don't know if you can, I'm going to zoom in more.
Yeah, I can see that last
The
one.
circles look fine, but at a certain point, this looks like a circle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem. So now we got to figure something out where maybe at a certain point, like if the size is a certain number, we have to adjust the border radius a bit. So let's arbitrarily, let's just say const size is this. So, oh, no. So the border radius function, it needs to know both the variant and also the size. Size, let's default it to sizes dot medium, sure. So at what point does it start looking funky? Probably around 24. That's my guess. Mm-hmm. Const let final. Again, I'll rename it to something else. If size is less than 20, no. It's fine. That's hardcode numbers. If it's less than that, then return actually, what am I doing? I don't even need this. Ugh, order of operations. So by default, our border radius is around 8, maybe? Oh, no. So if if it's a square, if border radius equals to, this is a variant. So if it's a square, and if the avatar size is less than 25, then instead of returning a size of 8, let's return a size of 4. There we go. Yay! So, like, I really enjoy nerding out about like trying to do developer and designer conveniences like this, because ultimately you don't really have to care about all that math that happens, right? You just say, I want avatar, I want this size, and that should happen. So that's what we have. Oh boy, initials. We'll get to that in a bit. So the cool thing about this is, instead of rendering inline styles, which are bad, not always, but in this case it's bad because it's difficult to override things, let's actually render these styles properly. And we can do this using the style system that is built into G2 components, and it's made available on every single view. And that is, if you give it, instead of inline styles, if you give it styles within a CSS property, we can see that all the inline styles are gone. And it's actually compiled into the final CSS we have here, which is nice because that's how it's supposed to kind of do that. And the really cool thing about this is that we don't have to like try to arbitrarily come up with class names and kind of like bind them together in like weird ways. Because typically in Sass, that's kind of what you have to do, right? You add some sort of modifier class name and you try to make this relationship happen. But it gets complicated and tricky when the sizes are arbitrary, right? Like here, I can give it a size of 13. And the only way for that to render without the style system is to inject 13 as an inline style, which could be disruptive unexpectedly for reasons later on. So with this, like the style system understands this and is able to compile it down correctly for us in a way that's super seamless, because at this level, at the component creation level, like, I don't need to care about the style system. You can that's like a whole nother thing. So what are your thoughts so far? So we only made a bunch of arbitrary shapes, but what are your thoughts so far?
So my first thought as a designer who's learning how to code
Yeah.
is what you have built here
Mm-hmm.
makes it really easy for people like me to be able to dive in and start to pull things apart
Yeah.
to be able to build what I need to build.
Yeah. And that is super, super intentional, because although I'm doing all this coding kind of stuff, like I myself, I come from design first. I'm a designer first. I learned how to code after the fact. And I always approach things from like, how do I make the experience better for the user? And I know what it feels like to be a designer who like wants to design and build something, but they don't really know how to code it.
Right.
I don't like that. It's a terrible feeling, because like, you have this idea, but you're unable to completely realize it. And there's like, you feel disconnected because of that. And I want to try to eliminate that, so ultimately the components and how you go about building them and developing them, once you know the React basics, right, then how you build and compose this stuff together, it should feel intuitive, because all that thought has been put into like how these little blocks are put together.
Right.
Yeah. So now
And
we have.
I
Yep.
think that this is a big thing for the community at large, because ramping up
Yeah.
there are a lot of folks out there that are just PHP based. So
Mm-hmm.
ramping up and getting to this point is challenging. So the better tools that we can devise to help people, jump into that pool,
Yeah.
um, is going to be really beneficial to get more people using and contributing in a positive way.
I think so too. Like React, as great as it is, the learning curve is quite steep
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to something like a jQuery or something else that people are already used to. So them having to like learn this UI framework that is React, them having to figure out how to like compile the code and do all that nonsense. On top of that, they have to like learn how Gutenberg works and like the components. Like it's a lot.
Yeah.
So, and we have to, in order to make sure that the community can thrive in this kind of, you know, JavaScript heavy, JavaScript first kind of environment, we have to set them up for success, which is a big driver for a lot of this work as well. Yeah, so I'm
Absolutely.
glad that you see it my way as well, because I think
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah. That's exactly what you've done here, and you've done a really good job of it.
Thank you. Um, so now instead of rendering, let's jump back into here. So instead of rendering arbitrary red colors, let's use like a correct base color. So this one may feel a little bit out of left field, but I haven't documented this yet either. So this one may feel a little strange. So UI coming from styles. Styles is a style system. UI is a collection of modifiers or presets that the system has system approved modifiers. So if you're familiar with something like Sass, you know how you can set up like a bunch of mixins or all that kind of stuff that eventually compiles down to something that the system approves of. UI kind of does the same thing. It comes with a bunch of stuff here. The thing that we want to use is background. Kind of ignore the CSS thing because that's what it compiles down to. But we want to use like a background of light gray, for example. So we can do that instead of red. So we'll use UI background light gray. And it should give us a light gray background. Hopefully. if you reload. Well, why is it not doing that? Why is it? Oh, because it's still there. Okay, there we go. Light gray, maybe dark gray, dark gray. So here's a really cool thing. Like, why did we need to go through this step just to render a background color? Because you could have just done, background light gray or whatever it is in line here. Because this, by using UI, it's tapped into the various systems of the library, which includes accessibility and styles. So a really good example is if I were to render background red. Right. We get the red background approved from the system, but we get colorblind support for free.
Okay.
Right? Because colorblind support, we need to consider red, yellow, and green. And in the system, they render red, yellow, and green backgrounds with distinct patterns so that someone who's colorblind, they're able to tell the differences between them. And by using this guy, we don't have to think about, oh, how do I inject like the background red pattern or whatever it is. It does that for us. So there's a lot of convenience stuff built into here. And again, similar to what we said earlier, once you kind of get used to this, we're setting you up for success because you get accessibility is handled for you for free, all that kind of stuff, so that the standard of the experience that we're building is just inherently higher because all that stuff is taken care of for you. So let's jump back to the dark gray. What are your thoughts on that? I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I think that's something that developers who don't design will appreciate it because it's kind of like Bootstrap.
Exactly.
You get a lot built into Bootstrap that you get for free.
Yeah.
And this is very similar to that.
I'm so glad you mentioned Bootstrap. Like Bootstrap was
Bootstrap.
Back in the day. You hate it?
Bootstrap is, to me, the analogy that I make, or the corollary, whatever you want to call it, is Bootstrap is for developers what Divi is for designers. I mean, it just, or maybe it's the other way around, but it's just this concept of it allows developers to do designy things without having to really think or process it, but it doesn't make good design.
Right. It's the output doesn't necessarily, I agree. The output may not be great, but it empowers developers to, jump through to do a thing that they would have otherwise not been able to do.
Right.
And I think that's a very powerful thing. And that's for me, that's why I really admire projects like Bootstrap. jQuery is the same thing, but for designers, right? Designers, they don't necessarily know how to low-level JavaScript-y things. jQuery makes it easy. And that gets them over the hump of being able to create wonderful experiences by not needing to know the bare mechanics of how JavaScript works, which ultimately is fine. You just want to craft the experience that's nice. So this experience that I'm trying to build here with YouTube components very much falls into that philosophy of trying to make it easy and nice for the people working on it or using it to build stuff. Okay, so now we have a little avatars. Let's what do we want to do? Initials?
Oh yeah, let's see. That's complicated. Let's see how you do that.
Yeah, let's see how we do that.
Not to put you on the spot.
No. This is why we do stuff. So I'm just gonna render some view, and we have a text in here that says, "Let me use your initials." What's your initial?
EV.
EV. All right. So render some arbitrary text in there. Okay, cool. So already off the bat, we notice some potential issues. Hang on. Right now, I can't tell what sizes they are. So let me just adjust that for us. We have a view. And then we'll just output the text size underneath it so we can see what on earth the size is. Great. Well, that's not very helpful. I need to know the actual pixel value. Here we go. Hang on. I'm going to avatar sizes is values. I may be wrong. Let And we get the index number. So now we can get this index of that. I may be wrong. We'll see. I'm wrong a lot of the time. Great. So now, yay, we did it. So now we have the actual pixel value, so we can see like, oh, this is a 16, this is a 48. I want some additional spacing in between these two, just so it's easier for me to work with. So with VStack and HStack, the cool thing about that is these are two fundamental layout components that are that you can use to build anything. Because ultimately, things are stacked from a layout perspective, either horizontally or vertically, and they have space apart. And that's kind of how we craft things. So here, if I want additional spacing in between these two, I just add the property spacing. I'll just give it 8. I don't know. That seems like a good amount. Also, by the way, these numbers, 8, it's a multiplier against the default grid system value base, which is 4. So this is one of those other things where it's like it keeps the implementer, the designer, developer subscribed into the style system without them having to think about it. So they're still doing valid style things, but they're able to arbitrarily customize them to be able to do whatever it is they want. So cool. So now we have that. We see the arrangement of all these guys. And the problem is up to a certain size, 16, the text is way too big for the little avatar there. So we have to do something. Size. So I'm just going to write this inline for now. Text size is, if the size is more than, no, if the size is less than 21, change the text size to 10. Otherwise, keep it default, which is undefined. Size, text size. All right, so now we have smaller text. Maybe it needs to be a little bit smaller. 8. Cool. Let me just zoom out a bit. Yeah, so this is the actual zoomed out view where it was like 1-to-1. That seems about right, I think.
Yeah, that looks good.
It's like tiny. Okay. So now when you have to align these the thing to the middle, we can do that. Let's see. We have some nice presets for us. UI. Because, okay, so how you would do this with CSS is you need 3 things: display, flex, align, item center, justify, content center, which is a very common pattern. So I built that into a preset for us. So we can do UI alignment center, and that should center it for us. Whoa. Hopefully it does. Hang on. Let's just try something as div. Well, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Okay. We have what? UI alignment center. That's a thing. I swear it's a thing. Yeah, and all this is heavily in development, and sometimes things just don't work. But I try. Let's see. Why are you not behaving? Fine. I'll just write this manually for now. Display, flex, silly. Line, items, center, justify, content, center. So this is another thing I want to illustrate, like doing common things like this, like trying to align things to the middle. Like within this library or whoever's using it, you shouldn't have to write this over and over. We should, like, presets and stuff should handle it for us, which in theory it should have, but for some reason it didn't. Anywho, so now we have this. Cool. How do we, oh wait, 24 seems a little bit weird. Let text size. So if the text size is less than, say, 28, make it, say, 12. And if the size is less than 21, we'll do text size is 8. So now we adjust it incrementally for, 12 is still a little bit too big. Cool. So now it feels like it scales a little bit better for 24, 16, and so on. Okay, so then how do we intelligently try to pluck out names from from a name? So it's basically what we need is we need a JavaScript function. I'm just going to write some pseudocode now. Get initials from a name. Hello there. And it basically needs to split this so that we get something like this, an array like hello and there. I'm going to keep this. And then we need to pluck the first letter from each one, so it becomes that H, T. And then you combine them together, which you get HT. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. How do we do that? I don't know. Well, I'm just going to console log some stuff. Console log get initials for, how do you spell your last name?
Oh my gosh, Q. That's why it's just Eileen. It's spelled like violin with an I at the end.
Like that?
Yep, that's it.
Wonderful. Cool. We're gonna automatically get you to get the initials for your name. So we'll have what do we call them? Names is name, and we split them based on a space. Console return names, because then we have first name, last name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Getting the first letter means map. How on earth do you get a name is? This is where Google JavaScript string get first letter character at. Oh, right. Okay. Name char at 0 ev, and then we join them together with nothing. Bang, ev. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
amazing.
now we can do, it expects a name property. And if we give it a name, const initials is get name. No, get initials from the name. So if we give the component a name, then we'll make it render the initials. Otherwise, don't. Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. Initials. Cool. So by default, it breaks. Wait, why is it breaking? I don't know why it's breaking. Let me just. Oh, sorry. My autosave deleted some stuff. There we go. All right. So by default, there's no names. But if we give this a name of violin I, it should spit out EV for us. Cool.
Or if it doesn't, then it's got nothing. Okay.
Yeah. So here's another cool thing. Part of this experience, so far, well, taking a step back, I think it's cool and it's also very necessary when we're working on components in such a micro level to be doing it in like a storybook or some sort of dedicated environment like this. I cannot imagine trying to do this inside of like a WordPress Gutenberg because of how heavy that stuff is, right? Mm-hmm. Like to come up with all these variations. I think I just might flip a table because I just can't. So having a dedicated environment, great. The other cool thing is I'm starting to build out a series of tools that support this kind of like prototyping, developing kind of experience. And it's coming from a package called ProtoKit. So there is something that comes from ProtoKit called Faker. Faker.js is really cool. I don't know if you've used it before. Faker also exists in other languages as well, like PHP and so on. But what's cool about that is that it can give you arbitrary random values for things like addresses, first names, and so on. So mm-hmm. This is wonderful because now we can actually use random names that this thing gives us to test against our avatar function to see if it's getting the name correctly. So instead of your name, we'll just make it spit out some sort of random name. So I'm just going to return this. Oh, dang. This nested array stuff. I think that's it. Okay, sure. I don't know. So how I know that it works is if I save and it auto formats. If it doesn't, then I know it's broken. So I just rely on that. Const random name is faker name, first name, I think. So now we get a random name. And also going to spit out the name down here so we can see it. Cool. Well, those are just first names, but great. First name is working, right? We want actually first name and last name. So we want first name and last name. Last name. Right. Yeah?
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah. It's very, very handy. I mean, right now it looks kind of messy, but we're kind of playing around, testing things out. And just to confirm that it's working for our square avatars, we'll do the same thing, except this one you render as a square variant. Variant is a square. Cool. For our square one, just for testing purposes, we'll just give it one single name, right? Just for like if you have no last name or you prefer not to show your last name. Like me, I just go by Q.
Right.
We just have that. Now we can see, now this is really cool because we can see in one shot the two variations, various sizes, first name and last name, or just one name, and to see how it all renders out. So now let's do if we give it an image. Here's a really interesting thing. I'm just going to jump back into pseudocode for a second. Pseudocode is better in brand new file. So right now we have a name, Q, right? We also have an image. Let's say images q.png. We have to handle the case where if you happen to give it both a name and an image. Because if you give it both, we can't render the initials there. We have to render an image instead, right? So we have to prioritize the image. So it can't render both. So we have to kind of add that logic in. And the other really cool thing about Faker, so now that we're using Faker, is Faker also has avatars. Avatar images, that is. Avatar image is faker.image avatar, I believe, which gives us an SRC. SRC is that. Man, once you start developing with something like Faker, it's very difficult to go back because it's just like working with arbitrary fixture data, especially with lists of stuff, right? Like you have 20 and you have names and all that kind of stuff. Having all that auto-generated for you, it's great. And that's another reason why I really like doing it in the browser, because having to do that within Sketch or something else is very painful. I remember back in the day where when I was doing like purely visual work, I had a table, not a table, even a table, like a list of just 5 users, right, with avatar and whatever. It's like, oh, okay, cool. What if we add 10 users? Fine, copy and paste it 10 times. It's like, oh, okay, what if we like move the title down a bit? Then it's just like, oh my God, I have to do that 10 times for all these arbitrary, it's nonsense. So
Right.
it's awful. That's why I like doing it in the browser, because it's easier. So where was I? Oh yeah. Let's go to SRC. I'm just going to console log this out. Console log SRC. So we can now see approximately 10 URLs, like so. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Right now it's complaining about something. All right, fine. Random. In React, you need to give things arrays keys, or else it gets mad at you. So that's what I'm going to do. Don't get mad. Okay, no more mad. So now I need to render an image. I'm just going to blindly inject an image SRC in here. Okay. There we go. We have that. Ship it. It's done. Okay, that's not acceptable. So here's where we like make the image component. This is where we'd make the image component. Image, src, and then we'll render a view as. So the cool thing about a view is you can render it as anything. So you can render it as image, h1. You can also render it as arbitrary, like custom components as well. But because you're using Vue, you get all that style system stuff and accessibility, all that stuff for free. So this allows you to, really elegantly use or migrate or integrate this stuff, the style system stuff, throughout your code base or whatever the case may be, slowly, without having to do like one shot. I'm gonna migrate everything, which never works. So anyway, image src. Let's just render a custom image component instead. There should be no difference, except now it's mad at me because it needs to be a string. All right. So let's do something here. By default, we want our images to be responsive because that's a sane thing to have. So we have the max width, 100% height auto. That's the default kind of like, this is how we make images responsive kind of thing. Okay. Cool. So now we have that. So instead of it competing, image, well, we can't have both. We need either image or initial. So it'll prioritize image. So we probably need some sort of functions like should render initials is if image doesn't exist. Sorry, src doesn't exist. And we get initials back. Initials. Yeah. Cool. So by default, oh wait, we'll have something along here like if we have an image, then we'll render the image. Ah, dang, it's not image, it's src. So, right, so if we have an image src, we'll render the image. Otherwise, the initials will check to see if it should render or not. Cool. There's something that we can do with Faker. I forget how we do this. There is like a random Faker, docs, random. There's a helper in here. Helpers, random. Oh my goodness. Faker, helper, random. So what I'm trying to do is random. There we go. What I'm trying to do is I want to try to make it randomly render either an image or a name. Like that way this array isn't just like always image or always name kind of thing. Okay. So we have to arbitrarily do inside of avatar. We can do faker helpers, if I remember, random, and you give it an array. So either that or nothing. That didn't work.
What?
I probably have the API wrong. Faker random number between range. There we go. This is what I looked up before. Faker random. No. Faker random number min max. My goodness. I just want random array element. Okay, fine. Random array element. Sure. Okay, cool. Great. So sometimes we have avatars, sometimes we don't. And now it knows how to handle both cases, which is nice. I'll do the same thing here as well. Cool. Well, one tricky thing is our avatar right now, it's not cropping the image. So we need to take care of that. We can just do something like overflow hidden for now. And that should take care of that. Cool. I'm gonna turn off inspector for now. There is a detail that I've considered while we're building this, and that is, I think Atlassian does this, where if you hover over the avatar and a name is provided, it'll give you a tooltip with the name. I think that's important. Otherwise, you don't know the name. So we can do that. As a very simple thing we can do is we can just do something like title is the name. And then we have a default HTML title where here you can get the full name, right? Vance Nicholas. Let's add a tooltip. Tooltip, content, tooltip, trigger. So right now tooltip works. It's just one note I have for myself is to clean up how this works because it's too many pieces to try to get this thing working for me. So we have a tooltip, we have a trigger and a content. Trigger is a thing that you put as the trigger mechanism, and the content is the stuff you show. Tooltip content is the name. Let's see if this works. Yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. And again, like we get all that for all that interaction for free, right? As the implementer, all you need to care about is I have an avatar, I have a name, here's the size, and here's the image. Take care of the rest for me. And the avatar is like, okay. Oh, there is one detail I kind of want to add, but I kind of don't want to. And that is, segment evergreen. Here's another design system that I poke around at every now and then. This might be too much for now, but it's a nice little detail. So they have different colors for their avatars, which I'm sure you've seen before.
Right.
But the interesting thing, I poked at the code underneath the hood, is that they generate the color based on the name. There's like logic in there that kind of like does some like, we'll match the best color based on your name. Overkill, but it's a nice detail.
That's really interesting.
It is. I probably will add that later on just because I need to dive into their code to figure out how they do it. But it's a nice detail for sure. Just zoom out. So we have these avatars, we have tooltips, and then we have, I'm going to make the text a little bold because it's a little hard to see. Wait, bold. There we go. Actually, doesn't look too great. Maybe less bold, like a 500 or something. Yeah, there we go. That looks nice. What else do we want to add? I guess a little status dot. You want to do that?
Yeah, that's I guess the next piece, right?
Yeah, that's the next piece. So we have and again, we'll refactor all of this nonsense when I'm done. But this is kind of like how I do my design in code. Like similar to, because I come from design and like, I didn't go to school for any of this kind of stuff. But like for me, because I'm a designer kind of person, how I usually get ideas out is like I sketch. And for me, this is like the code equivalent of sketching, where I'm just like dumping ideas to see if I can get something to work. Because, I mean, that's just how my brain works. Some other developers, they prefer to do some more regimented things like TDD, where I write tests for everything, then I write my code. That's not how my brain works. I sketch with code.
Yeah. You need to see it on the screen first.
Yeah, I need to see it. I need to play around. I need to make mistakes, status dot. So the status dot, it renders a circle, view, UI, border radius, circle, and it's like usually the dots are always like one size. So I'm just skipping ahead a little bit. These are, again, convenient little presets that we have with height that compiles down to something. And I guess we need a background color or something. I'm just going to do background of green for now. So I'm just going to add the dot inside of here, inside of our avatar. Great, everything is green. Yay. Oh, there is a problem. Eileen, there's a problem.
Yeah, that's 16.
Well, yeah, there's that. Because I used overflow hidden, I can't position it outside, right? So
Right.
yeah, so now I got I can't use overflow hidden. Well, step one, I can't do that. But if I don't use overflow hidden, the image is now outside. So what I need to do is I actually need to go to my image, props, props. So there's CSS prop. I'm going to do something which hopefully that works. So I will pass along the border radius into the image as a CSS property. Hopefully that works. If it doesn't, there's other ways. Yeah, there we go. Yay! Border radius is passed down. That works. The status dot is not working, but that's okay. So the Z index of the status dot needs to be higher. It's a different layer compared to these guys, right? So let's adjust that. Const styles, Z index. Let's just make it 1 for now. It also needs to do that position top right kind of dealio. So we have a handy dandy little guy here, position top right. Preset, which should, no, it's all the way over there on the, on the screen because there's no position relative to kind of clamp it down. So let's add that. UI, position relative. Great, so now we have this going on. Status dot seems a little bit way too big. Let me just reduce the size a little bit to, I don't know, 8. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh God, I remember this. This is FYI. Once upon a time ago, I built all this stuff already. So that's why I'm able to fly through this a little bit quicker. So previously, I worked on an embeddable chat application where we had all this. This is the component library that I worked and created for them. So avatars, naming, status dots, different sizes, borders, and so on. And the thing I remember that was like annoying was, you see how in the square the status dot reliably renders on the top right? It's like the same kind of spot every single time. But when you have a circle, sometimes it's in the right spot and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
So I think I remember I had to do something like, if you were using a circle and depending on the size, adjust the status dot just so that it's like in the right appropriate corner kind of deal. I won't go too much into that. Like, it's not too complicated, but you can imagine there's some math that's involved to kind of doing that. So I can kind of do that offline. But these are one of those little like nuanced things that, again, as someone who is going to use an avatar component, I am very grateful that stuff is built in. I don't need to think about it.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's exactly this. You're building exactly what folks need to tap into.
Yeah. So for status, what kind of statuses are available? I mean, this is sort of like a, I don't know. It depends on the use case, right?
Right. So, you're either online or you're offline.
Online, offline, you can have maybe an idle, which is like a yellow and orange or something like that. So I can probably tap into these colors. So if I jump into tags, there's these colors that we can use: blue, green, orange, purple, red, yellow. Let's just like say you can pass in whatever color you want for now. Color is by default green, and then the background will be green. Let's just do that. So now I can do, aha, this is going to be fun. So I need the status from here, status, and then the status would then pass down into status dot, but only render if we have a status. All right, so now we don't see any dots. Cool. And at this point, let's try status, and let's make it random. So it can render no status, it can render green, it can render red, or it can render orange. Let's just say that's the case. So far, it really likes green, unless this is not working. I think it's not. Yeah. Oh, I think it's because it's not working. You have to change that to color. There we go.
That's better.
Yeah. I'm sighing because there's like a one more thing. So, in designs where sometimes like on iOS or whatever the case may be, they show like a little circle, but then there's like a border around it, and that border happens to look transparent, kind of.
Yeah, that nice little cutout you did over there on that system that lots of people know.
The cutout. I wish there was a CSS prop. No, wait. Oh, yeah, I wish there was some sort of CSS way that automatically clips it so that, the actual circle doesn't have to define a border color, because in this case it does. That's how we're able to get that illusion, right? But I wish there was some way to just clip the top little right-hand side. That way we don't have to arbitrarily give them border colors. Because the border color could change depending on what background you have.
Right.
So maybe we'll just say all status dots have some like a white border. Keep it simple for now. Well, that does not look great. Let me just adjust this a little bit. Yeah. Oh, this is stupid. See, the small size circle, it needs to behave a little bit differently. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Yes. So, ignoring that part. Hang on. The circle ones are driving me mad. I'm just gonna render them into the squares. Oh, that's actually off too. And so right now it's aligning to the top corner. It needs to go like minus a bit, right? Minus left and minus top a bit, so that it's like actually in the corner. We can do that. The status dot. We'll add some. UI offset X is -2 pixels. Y is -2. Nope. X is +2. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe 4. 4. There we go. Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to stop because I can go on and on. So from the chat application, I don't know if they still have it, but I remember I did a thing where like, in addition to the name, you can also pass in a custom message. So you can do something like name is online, name is offline.
Right. Away or
whatever the case may be. So I'm just laughing. Tooltip text. Sure.
It's like punchy now.
It's like tooltip. Right. So here, you can arbitrarily give it some text to show up there if you want to. Otherwise, it'll just use the the name. So in this case, let's just say tooltip text is away. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
That works. Great. Cool. Oh no. So one final thing I kind of want to try is I did this in the last Zoom session, and that was stacking avatars in this manner. So this one is replicating the kind of effect that we have on GitHub. But anytime you have a group of avatars, they kind of need to stack in that way where they're kind of overlapping each other. Let's try that. And by the way, I'm not sighing because I hate doing this. It's just like, oh man, how am I gonna do this kind of thing? But
honestly, you are making it look effortless. So.
Oh, thank you. So in addition to HStack, horizontal stacking, VStack, there's another helper we have, ZStack, layer stacking. So let's try that. Let's try that. ZStack, and I'm going to render a bunch of avatars inside arbitrarily. I'm just going to get rid of statuses. I'm going to make them all squares. The size, we'll just keep it one consistent size for now. It's down here. Right, so they're all
stacked
on top of each other. But the cool thing about ZStack is, let me just zoom in a little bit. And if I inspect the code for every single item, I think these are the items. Notice how we have the Z indexes automatically applied? Because you need to do that in order to achieve that effect, right? And ZStack, a convenient layout helper, does that automatically for us, which is nice. So now I just need to tell it to align a little bit differently. And I totally forgot how to do that. So I'm going to check out what I did. Is layered. Right, that's what I named it. So right now, they're all layered on top of each other. We don't want layering effect. So we'll turn that off. And now they kind of look like that. I'm going to get rid of the little text underneath because that throws off everything. Cool, so now they're next to each other, right? But I kind of want them to be layered on top of each other, in that little offset kind of thing. And I believe there's a way to do that. Offset 4. There we go. Yeah. Now we get that kind of effect. Just refresh a little bit. So you kind of have this little. The backgrounds are actually transparent, which is why you kind of get that. That's probably something I need to change. But we get this little layered effect, which is nice. I'm gonna change the offset a little bit to actually 8. So it's a little bit more dramatic. Actually, I'm gonna make the avatars show all the time, so we don't get that background. There we go. But what if I want the order to be reversed? So right now it's doing that one is the back. I kind of want this one to be at the very front. ZStack. There should be a way to do that. Is reversed. True. This is why I need documentation for this stuff. Otherwise, I forget. So I guess it's reversed by default. Is reversed false? One of those. I don't think that did it, but is layered offset is false count. ZStack is what? One of them. One of them should do it. I can't. Is it reversed or? Oh, I think I'm applying it to the wrong thing. That's why. Avatar stories is reversed. There we go. Now we have that thing going on, which is nice. Let me just change them to circles so we can see. There we go. So with this little Z-stack thing, we can make a new component. We'll call it avatar group, which accepts just children. And all this does is it renders a Z-stack with stuff inside. Children. This is there's two important design details here. One is, well, Z-stack exists, which is great because it magically does that for us. And we're explicitly creating a brand new component for the users called avatar group. And this is important because, I mean, they could have just used the Z-stack code and like, add just a handful of little properties in order to achieve this effect. But that's not easy to remember. What's intuitive is I have a group of avatars. I put avatars inside of a group, and that should magically render the things for me. So this may mean some extra components, but it's way easier to remember, therefore more intuitive, and this thing is easier to use. So now we have an avatar group that can render an arbitrary amount of avatars that can stack in this fashion. Yay! Well, I mean, there's still some cleanup stuff I have to do, but how's it going so far for you?
It's awesome. I'm blown away. This is really cool.
Thank you. Inspector. Yeah, we can see our inspector. Yay. Did you have any thoughts or questions?
So the thing that my brain will do is say, wow, here's this really great prototyping tool. And then I'm automatically like thinking, how do we get to the next step? Which is obviously not today, but it's how can you deliver this in a way that people can start using it to build what they need to build for WordPress?
Yeah. And that next step ultimately comes from, well, other than, publishing the packages on NPM and all that stuff, comes from documentation, really. That way, if like me, I struggled a bunch because there wasn't documentation. It's there for reference, but it's here for learning. And that's a very, very important thing. And that's a struggle I have right now with WordPress components, because if we take a look at the handbook, and I'm not, by the way, knocking anybody. I mean, I'm part of the project as well.
Right. Well, I said this to Carolina over the weekend. We're building a plane while flying it, so there's.
I don't even know where it is. Button, sure. Component reference, sure. Yeah. So we have something like maybe button, sure. So we have something like this, right? Some best practices docs and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But like, there's such a disconnect between this and the actual code that I'm writing. There's no snippets. Like I guess I can copy this, but I don't know what it looks like. So like having interactive docs like this, I think is really important, because then, I mean, you can play around with this stuff to get a better idea of, oh, this is how I'm supposed to build things. But then you can also just, when you're done, you can copy it and paste it into whatever it is you're building. Can I show you something?
Sure.
Yeah. So expanding on like, how do we make these docs or this experience a little bit better for developers and designers? I built a feature in the doc site where if you were to search for something, by the way, there's global search, by the way, which is really nice. If you were to search for something like here, we'll just do HStack because we use it a bunch today. And if you wanted to use it, you could, from here, you can copy and paste it in, paste a snippet for you.
Oh, cool.
Or, depending on your code editor, you can actually drag it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so here, I want to use HStack or VStack, and I'll just drag it in there. Oh, maybe I want some text, and then drag some text inside of here. VS Code doesn't work. This doesn't work for VS Code just because it's a limitation of VS Code, but for editors like Sublime, MacVim, whatever it is you may want to use, that works. It actually works on the iPad as well. If you do multitasking, you can actually drag and paste it into a Notes app.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But to fill in that VS Code gap, I actually published an extension for snippets. So in this case, if I wanted an HStack example inside of VS Code, I can just do G2. We have all these snippets here. We'll just do HStack, and it'll generate that for us.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the kind of like experience I want to build for this. Like, imagine, if you're a block developer or whatever, and you wanted to access all these components, like imagine how fast you can go just by having all these things available for you.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm working on trying to figure out what that experience is and really like be mindful of that and craft and fine tune for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it also helps me because I use those tools and that workflow to help build components like avatars really quickly. And the cool thing is, I think ultimately when the experience is right, the tooling is right, the docs is right, all that stuff, all that works together so that the code kind of builds itself over time. Like, because the styling system there, accessibility and all that stuff is taken care of, during this whole process, I didn't need to think about it. But I got it out of the box for free. Not for free, but but you know what I mean.
You were paying it forward. Someone else is getting it for free.
Yeah, someone else is getting it for free. But yeah, I think that's it for avatars today. Happy to answer any questions or do whatever, design or code thing that you may be interested in. Any thoughts?
So you've answered all of my questions. Of course, you know where I'm approaching things and coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it in terms of how do we build out this tool so that we can get more people on board.
Yeah.
Building things easily. And I love, so I guess then the next step is you've got this component for avatars, but then we need a similar component built in the same way for buttons or other reusable pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the next step, or?
Yeah. So at least for buttons, like right now, the component library, I don't know if you can see on the left-hand side, these are all the components that it has right now, which it's not everything, but it's quite substantial. So it does have buttons and it does have a bunch of things that you can build interfaces with. And if there's anything that's missing that we feel like, oh, this would probably benefit people, we'll just add it in there. Is that kind of, does that answer your question? Apologies if it doesn't.
I've been in Storybook before, but I think it's I'm still a little bit on a learning curve in terms of understanding how to use it to its capability.
Yeah, and right now, this is literally an experimental dumping ground for me to like work on these things. So it's super messy. The tidied up version of all this stuff hopefully will be here in documentation, where you know all the components, you know how they work, you know how you can use them, which I feel like this is where they need to be. Here it's just code sandboxy dumping ground for now. I mean, for certain companies, instead of having a dedicated doc site like this, they could clean up Storybook so that they can use it in that manner. There are plugins and stuff that you can use to do that. For me, I deliberately chose to do a different one, like a dedicated site for it, just so that we have conveniences like everything here, like a search and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's like tons and tons of components that we can work on and add for this to make this better. Any other thoughts?
It's awesome.
Thank you.
It's really awesome.
And I'm very, very grateful that you tuned in today to help support this. I mean, it's still super early, as you can tell from the dumping ground that is the Storybook. But my goal is hopefully I'm considering the right pieces and building out the system and the mechanics to in service of that. So thinking of the end user designer and all the steps in between, the designing and coding journey for this whole thing. And if you have any ideas on how I can improve, or maybe like, oh, it'd be cool if we add this component, or if we added this thing to the docs, or we did some cool thing, then the repo is johnq/g2, and just submit an issue. And I mean, if you want to, do you want me to add you as a contributor here? And you're free to do whatever you want.
Sure, I would love to help out.
Great. Manage access, I guess. Okay. What is your GitHub username? I will add it in there.
My username is It's Just Eileen.
Cool. It's similar to mine. I have the it's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
it's a wonderful prefix.
when you say my whole name, people are like, "What?" So.
Yeah, I wish I can just do it's Q, or it's just Q. Oh, maybe I'll namespace this, or I'll like, yeah, I'll snag some domain names and Gmail addresses for.
Or it's just Q.
Well, we'll see. Hang on. It's probably taken already. I don't know. Never mind. I can't do that.
That's the test of whether or not you've got a.
Yeah, I'm not original enough. So before I jump off, I want to get your thoughts on something. I don't know if you've seen some of the dragging experiences in here yet. Have you seen some of this?
I haven't seen the dragging experiences here in Storybook, no. Okay,
great. So G2 Components is like a project that's built on lots of systems. In one system I think is sorely missing within WordPress Gutenberg is like or even WordPress or just any application, is a app-wide kind of drag drop system where things are just, theoretically you can drag anything into anything to accomplish what you want. And you see that it's a very common thing in like Figma or any kind of like visual design tool, right? Mm-hmm. Drag and drop is very common. If we want to build that experience, we need to have a smarter system-wide drag drop thing. Otherwise, you're just like ad hoc, make this draggable, make this droppable, make this whatever. It doesn't work. So one of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to establish that. So this is an example I'm trying right now where we have maybe some blocks on the side and we can plot them in. Whoop. It's kind of cool. And then you can also sort them in this way. So that's like a little drag builder I built. And this one is like testing out how I can drag between different kind of contexts. So here I have users, I have editors, I can drag and drop them in between.
Right.
Yeah. So this one of the things that I'm thinking of, one of the many, many things. But ultimately, like if we can nail this part, then it should feel easy, right? As a block developer, whoever is like, oh, make this draggable into the editor, or make this sortable or something like that. And then you get draggable, sortable, all that stuff for free, which elevates the entire experience of something like Gutenberg.
Right. And it makes it very consistent.
It does. Because
so
then
we don't have everybody doing
their own drag system, which ultimately is what's happening right now, right? People have their own systems to doing things. We want to create, I guess, default systems that are so good that you choose to use them because they're good. Not because like, well, it's part of Gutenberg, so I guess I have to use it. Because that's where some bad feels kind of comes from. Right. We want to make sure everything is first class.
Exactly. No, agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thanks. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise. And I hope you have a fantastic day.
Okay, you too. Cheers.
Catch you later. Bye.
Bye.